Greetings, everyone. Tim Anderson here, aka Renfell, and welcome to the latest Monday Musings episode where I talk about all the random things that are going on with me. They might have to do with gaming, they might have to do with non gaming stuff, etc. This week, I don't really have a set agenda this week. A lot of the times I'll sit down and have a list of 5 or 6 things. I do have a couple things I want to talk about, but not like a set list today. Um, the hand is healing. If you can see the pinky and the index finger, like that pink section there, this knuckle, this knuckle, this knuckle, this the pinky's going to be one that takes the longest to heal. Um, it's still quite sensitive, but I've got full movement back, and it's just applying creams, 3, 4 times a day, and it's most of it has peeled off like sunburn. That was fun. I kept joking with my wife. I was like, chicharrón, ¿no quieres un poco de chicharrón con su desayuno, por favor? Um, it was nasty. It was like crackling. For those of you who don't know what chicharrón is. All right. First thing I want to talk about this morning. They got me, ladies and gentlemen. I pre-ordered Mass Effect: The Legendary Edition for the PS4. I originally was on the fence about whether or not I was going to jump on that bandwagon because I played those games when they first came out. Amazing games. Loved the story. And, I replayed all of them at least once. And I know I played the first one like 2 or 3 times, or like 3 or 4 times, excuse me. But I played all of them at least twice. But that was years ago. And it's been a long time. And I have fond memories and I wouldn't mind jumping back in. I think the interesting thing about the Legendary Editions is that they're coming back with all of the DLC, which I never played. I never played any of the downloadable content, none of it. I literally only ever played the base games, and that was it. Um, there may have been, I have a vague recollection of perhaps doing a DLC for the second game um, that had to deal with like rescuing some prisoners or something, but it's been so long ago, I just don't recall. But I do remember never doing any of the DLC for the first or third games. Um, so for me, I looked at it and being on the fence about it, I was like, the original games are fun. They were great. I love the stories. Is it worth $60? Is it worth dropping $60 on the pre-order? And I just started looking at all the progress they've been making, and eventually I got to the point. I think it was 2 days ago. I was like, well, I'm finally getting to the end of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I'm like 100 hours plus on that game right now. But I'm getting to the point where I am going to be wrapping that up sometime in the next month. And I was like, it gives me a goalpost now of going, I just need to finish Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I need to just make sure that I get that finished before I dive into um, the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. Because I looked at it and went, those 3 games plus all of the DLC, there's nothing really on the horizon that I want to play in terms of PS4 content. As far as the PC goes, I'm only playing 2 things. I'm playing Lord of the Rings Online, and I'm playing Solasta, which I think is a great game, but it's early access, and so eventually I'm going to hit a cap on that. With Lotro, my brother, and this has been the way it's been for years. He always has a big chunk of time when he can play for like 4 to 6 months during the winter months. But once the weather starts to change, he's got outdoor stuff. He's got excavation company. He's got the ranch. He's got a son. My nephew who's like what, I think 6 years old now, and the kid's got soccer. Soccer, aka football, um, t-ball, like all these outdoor activities. They just did a soapbox derby thing and won first place for creative design because he loves to paint, and so yeah, it's really cool. So anyway, my brother can't keep up with the Monday Thursday night schedule that we've had for the past few months, so he's gone back to his traditional summertime schedule, which means he doesn't have a lot of time to play. Um, so I looked at that and went, well, I'm still playing Lord of the Rings Online a couple times a week with my lore master, but I'm doing those, on my free time when I have free time. Solasta is a project that I'm looking at more from an R&D perspective, but also highly enjoyed it. I'm putting together an in-depth video about it, which will be out sometime later in April. And so I was going, you know what, I've got time for what is the next game that's going to take up that space that Assassin's Creed Valhalla has been taking up for me. And so that's going to be Mass Effect Legendary Edition. I do have my eyes on a lot of the next gen console games, but they're not going to be coming out until the later part of this year or 2022 even. Here's an example. God of War, the next God of War game, I don't think that they're coming out this year. I think it's going to be coming out next year. The new Harry Potter game, which looks amazing, that's not going to be coming out until next year. Those are the types of games that I'm interested in playing and will want to play on the PS5. So I haven't been compelled to buy a PS5 yet because my PS4 works great. It's still, knock on wood, getting great life out of that console. And I still have plenty of games that I'm getting to play on that thing. So, knowing that there wasn't anything releasing in the foreseeable future, and I wanted to find something that I could fill in the gap with once I finish up Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I made the plunge. So that's going to be my summertime game, basically. Because we're still in pandemic, we're still working from home, no travel. Um, they're about, as far as I know, like they still haven't. Supposedly, the 50 to 60-year-olds were supposed to start getting vaccinated here starting in April. It's April 11th, and the government has still not finished doing the 60 to 70-year-olds here in Mexico. So it's looking like I was theoretically supposed to be able to register at the beginning of May to get my vaccination. I'm not thinking that they're going to actually hold to that schedule. I'm wondering if it's going to be more like mid-May, late May. Who knows? It's going to be months before I get a vaccination, let alone Chris, who's in the next bracket behind me. Um, we're looking at still being 2 to 3. Well, hang on. Where are we at right now? We're April. So June, July, maybe we're getting vaccinated in June, July. We don't really know. It could be July, August. So it's going to be at least until August/September until we can even safely, theoretically, travel. It might be October until we can safely travel, depending on when the vaccinations roll around. And by that point, I'm going to need to get a flu shot on top of everything else. So, in other words, we're not going anywhere. We're still homebound for the next 6 to 8 months at the very least. So yeah, I wanted something else to fill up my time, and I did download ESO online because I've got whatever was the last expansion from last year, so I'm up to date with everything, just not the most recent. But then Mass Effect Legendary got me, and I was like, I think I'll be doing that game instead. And I guess that leads me into the topic that I can talk about after that, which is it's made me want to rewatch um, Babylon 5. Now, if you have never watched this show, the first thing I said when I played the Mass Effect game, um, and then especially once I had played the whole trilogy out, but especially the first game, I went, holy crap, this is exactly like the storyline from Babylon 5. Because the storyline of Babylon 5 is all about this ancient evil that comes back and wants to, take over, wipe out humanity, etc. And there are a ton of story beats, that humans joining this, conglomerate of spacefaring people who have been doing it, of aliens and etc. who've been doing it for long before humans. Um, there were a lot of parallels when I played that first Mass Effect game, and at that point I had only watched Babylon 5 through once. I have since, in the years since then, gone back and watched Babylon 5 a second time, and I gotta admit that with not there's two reasons here because I follow J. Michael Straczynski on Facebook. I don't subscribe to his Patreon. I probably should because he does a lot of cool writing stuff over there. Uh, he's a brilliant guy. As a showrunner and as a writer, he's an incredibly talented person. I don't just love that show. If you've never seen, there was a sci-fi show that he did. It only ran for 2 seasons on Showtime. It was called Jeremiah. Holy crap, that's one of my favorite. It's up there with like these canceled sci-fi shows that I really love. It's up there with like Jericho, Firefly. Like there are some really good sci-fi shows that I love that were unfortunately canceled, and Jeremiah is up there in like that list of like my favorite top five sci-fi shows that were canceled. And J. Michael Straczynski also did um, the uh, the Jeremiah show, which was a fun sci-fi show about it was a pandemic that wiped out everybody over the age of like 15 or something, as I recall. And so the show picks up like 15, 20 years after that, and it's these kids who have grown up without adults, and they've grown up having to live in this post-apocalyptic world with like no internet and no electricity and no adults and nothing. And so it's just this lawless, chaotic landscape, this post-apocalyptic landscape across the United States and Canada, and how he has to navigate that. Great show. Anyway, I digress though. Babylon 5 was unique in the sense that it was one of the first television shows that did this entire arc of, had a very, very clearly defined start and finish in mind. And he wrote, I think, like 85% of the episodes. I know he wrote hundreds of the episodes. Um, and I say hundreds, I don't really remember how many there were. Anyway, it's got me thinking if I'm going to dive back into Mass Effect, it's got me jonesing. It said it ran for five 22 episode seasons. There was also some movies which I didn't really, they were okay. Um, this is one of those shows where, unfortunately, the special effects were pretty atrocious. And it was running around the same time as Deep Space Nine, which was another show that was set on a space station. So Babylon 5 is also set on a space station, and DS9 had the big budget and was on a big television network, whereas Babylon 5 was a small budget on a smaller cable network, so it had a much smaller following. If you can get past the special effects, just get past the special effects for a minute, and some of the acting, but the same thing you can say about Deep Space Nine. Get past some of the acting. Um, Babylon 5 is an amazing show. When you look at it from the creative standpoint in terms of the story that was told over the course of these five seasons. And there's a lot of times where I want to look at the first season and kind of pull it out because they had another lead actor during the first season and they had an arc that went for the first season. But for me, there are things that take place in the first season that do impact and are part of the storyline for seasons 2 through 5. But for me, season 2 is when John Sheridan joins the cat. I think that was his name. It's been a while since I've watched this, so I'm making sure that I'm not making up. Yeah, John Sheridan. I always forget how to pronounce his names. Bruce Boxleitner. Boxleitner. Um, yeah. Anyway, he plays this character of John Sheridan, who's like the commander of the space station, and oh my God, it's such a good show, and it's made me want to go back, especially because I know over the years they've lost several of the cast members. Most recently, I think it was like a month or two ago, the lady who played Mira Furlan, she was a Czechoslovakian actress, I think. Um, Croatian, that's what it was. Um, some people who might not know her from that show, she played Danielle Rousseau on Lost. So she was an amazing Croatian actress, and she was the most recent cast member to pass away. I want to say a month or two ago, and it was unrelated to COVID. She had other health issues. But over the years, I think like half of the cast, Jerry Doyle, Mary Furlan, I mean, there's been like half a dozen or so, unfortunately, of the cast members who have passed away. Anyway, um, spinning back around to Mass Effect Legendary Edition, that combined with just seeing J. Marco Straczynski talk about it recently, because I think Babylon 5 started streaming somewhere a couple months ago. It's a place that I don't sub to, but I may go back and start rewatching that. I don't think that's something Chris would watch with me. She's not big into science fiction with aliens and stuff, and there are a lot of aliens in Babylon 5. But I just think the story is so good, and I've cried both times when you get to the end because there's prophecy that has to be fulfilled, and the way that the series ends is bittersweet. It's not a bad ending at all. It's a very good ending, but it's kind of like, I can't really compare it to anything, but it's a bittersweet ending where it's like you're happy, but at the same time you're sad, and so you're crying, and oh, it's just. And the special effects do get better as the show went on because it got a bigger and bigger budget. And some of those companies went on to do big films and big series after that show because that was like the show where they, that was like their training wheels show where they were getting going as special effects companies. Anyway, um, if you haven't ever watched Babylon 5 and you have access to wherever it's streaming right now, you should watch it. Let me see where it's streaming at as a out of curiosity. I thought it was like Hulu, but I could be wrong. Babylon 5, where is it streaming? You can watch Babylon 5 remastered on HBO Max is where it's currently streaming. And it's remastered, so they've done like a 4K. It's like I went and watched the YouTube video about it. I mean, it's weird because some of the original episodes from like the first season, it wasn't shot in a widescreen format, so they can't really fully get things up to 4K. But they have done like this 4K remastered version. It looks a little better, but it still doesn't make up for kind of crappy special effects. I'm not gonna lie. There's some special effects in that show that were really god awful. But God, the storyline. I always come back to the storyline, which was one of the things I loved about Mass Effect so much was the storyline. Obviously, it was when it launched, it was definitely. I feel it was ahead of its time because it was one of the first times that we saw um, really getting into the voice acting and motion capture for actors, and that combined with the trademark BioWare like dialogue wheel and choices really having impacts and being able to romance your characters and see that play out through motion capture and everything else, it really made me in any way, in any case, from my perspective, I really was attached to the character of John Shepard a lot more than I would have been any other previous games that I had played by them. And that's the other thing too. Somebody asked me, I was on TikTok talking with this other TikToker. She's hugely psyched for the remastered Legendary Edition, and we were having this back and forth about it. And she was like, "What are you gonna play? Like, are you gonna go Renegade or are you gonna go Paragon?" And I was like, "I've always done Paragon in the past, and I don't really think I'm gonna change that. I don't like to play evil characters. I like to play chaotic neutral, chaotic good." Usually chaotic good. Like I'll do some things that are not necessarily in the interest of law and order, but I typically make good decisions, you know, to help people and, things that aren't about, you know, genocide or killing off people. I try to help where I can. I've always tried to help the Krogan, etc. And I don't think that'll change this time around. But I'm mostly interested in getting into it and doing the DLC because I never did the DLC. And that was the way when I went into the second playthrough of The Witcher 3. I'd played the first game all the way through, and then I had come back and started the game again, then dropped it because I got busy with other stuff. And then a year or so later, I went back and I remember because I bought the base game on the PC, so I first played it on the PC. And then at some point last year, like early mid 2020, um, it came up for sale on the PS4 on the PlayStation Store with all of the DLC and everything else for like $10 or it was some ridiculously low price. I didn't even have to think of it. It was an impulse purchase. And then I immediately installed it and I immediately sat down and I just spent like about 3 months and I just played it. And I played the whole game and I played all the DLC and Blood and Wine, holy crap, that's like one of the coolest DLCs I've ever played. And just the way that it ends, it's not a spoiler alert at this point. The game's been out for like 5 years, but the way it ends with Geralt, getting his own vineyard and kind of retiring in the sunset, after all this shit that's happened to him, it was like this is just a really cool way to end the storyline. It wasn't like a nasty, dark, stupid ending. It was like this really cool, like, yeah, there was some bittersweet moments leading up to the end of that storyline, but when you get to the end, and it's like he just kind of gets a chance to settle down and actually live a life, as opposed to, from the time he was a kid, he was forced into this lifestyle and never had any option. He was sold into it basically, and being able to finally have a choice and retire basically from being a Witcher. I thought that was a great ending, which is why I really hope that whatever they do next with the Witcher franchise, I hope they leave Geralt's character alone. We've had 3 great games, 10 years of great content for that character, and I think it's time for the franchise to go in a different direction. But you can also look at the Mass Effect franchise and see how, when Andromeda came out, which by the way, I freaking loved. I don't care about I was really disappointed about the decision not to do DLC and not to continue that storyline. I don't know what they're going to be doing with the next Mass Effect game. They're working on it, but who knows? I would really love it if they just picked up where that Andromeda left off, because it was a cool adventure. But that was the thing, is like they did the 3 games. It was his own set story. Then, years later they come back and they revamp the intellectual property with this new concept in the same universe, and it was, everybody was waiting with bated breath and expecting great things from it, and then it came out and it had bugs, bugs that didn't bother me. The animation that everyone, I remember the eye animations was the big thing that everyone was flipping their shit over. I didn't care. It was like, it's an animation, freaky little animation thing where some characters have their eyes wide open. It didn't affect me at all. Didn't affect the storyline. I didn't have any crashes. I didn't find any bugs. I played that game, loved it, finished the game, started it a second time with a different character, played it all the way through. I literally played it back to back. That's how much I liked. It was just like the first one. It was like I liked it as good as the first 3 games, that I was immediately drawn back in, and I did 2 playthroughs. And then I found out that they weren't gonna do any DLC, and then they were just canceling it, and we're gonna go and focus our time on, the next Dragon Age game and Anthem and all this other stuff. And it was like, well, that sucks. So anyway, Witcher related, I'm hoping that whatever they do with the Witcher franchise, um, that they decide to um, do it right. Which brings me back to the Cyberpunk 2077. So I originally said that once I finished up AC Valhalla, I was going to go back and replay AC Valhalla now that they've done all the patches for the PS4 and everything. And now I'm thinking I'm just going to sit on it and wait, because they did an investment call last week, and they said that they're still, all the plans for the DLC, all the new content, like all the expansions are already planned out and are coming out for Witcher, or for Cyberpunk. I think I'm just going to sit on Cyberpunk. Honestly, I think I'm just going to sit on it and wait for the first expansion pack to launch. I'll buy that, and then I'll go through, because I don't think that's even planned until maybe the end of this year or early next year. I don't really know. I know there was like a Steam leak and showed a bunch of like downloadable content, but it's not expansion content per se that's supposed to be coming out over the course of this year. I'm just going to let all that come out, and then whenever that first expansion pack drops, I'll pick it up and dive back into the world of Cyberpunk, because I really did enjoy that game. It was bugged as fuck. It really was. Like, because I played the PS4 version and it's bad. But I think it was a great storyline, and there were some aspects of it that were really repetitive, but overall, I found the storyline great, and I would love to dive back into that world and see how they continue to flesh that out. We'll see. But then also, thinking about repeatable content and stuff, that's one thing that I am getting a little bit tired of in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I can't remember who, it was either PC. No, it wasn't. It was Kotaku or one of these other gaming sites did a review of Assassin's Creed Valhalla the other day, and they were like, it's too damn big. Like, they need to find their focus. And I was like, I kind of feel that, because I'm over 100 hours into the game. And when I first started the game, I said I was going to do the completionist version. I gave that up at like 60%, like 60 hours in, 65 hours in. I gave up on doing the completionist version, because it got just so repetitive, like going around and getting all the treasures, all the mysteries, doing all the world quests. There is a ton of content, and absolutely probably 300 hours of gameplay in that game if you do all of that side stuff. But at some point, it gets really repetitive, and it's just like, but even the main quests, you know, you can break them down into these like 2 to 3 hour chunks in the main storyline, where it's pretty much always you're gonna go help this person in this realm of the kingdom, and it's either gonna be you're gonna have to solve a mystery or kill some people or gather some herbs or do these things, and you're basically going to do this event that's like 2 or 3 hours long, and you'll eventually get to a big battle or something, and then that's it. They're your ally, and you go back to your home base, and then you move on to the next territory, and you repeat that process. And some of the storylines have been better than other ones. They're not all that great. Some of them are really good. Um, One thing I miss about Assassin's Creed Odyssey was the humor that was in Odyssey is largely missing from Valhalla. Valhalla is a much more serious game. There's not a lot of the same humor. Like one of the things I loved about Odyssey is like the opening sequence where you gotta get the eyeball, you gotta steal that dude's eyeball, and then you take it back to him and you taunt him, and he's like looking at you, and you literally stick it up the sheep's ass, and the sheep runs off, and the guy's like, ah, my eye. Like there was that level of humor in Odyssey that's missing from Valhalla. Valhalla is much more a very serious game, and they want to really drive it home, the stake of everything. There are moments where there has been some comedic stuff going on, but not nearly the level of Odyssey. And I have to admit, at this point, I think the last 2 or 3 sessions I've played, I'm really just playing it to finish the freaking game because I'm kind of over it at this point. It's a great game, don't get me wrong, but I've been playing it since it launched, which was like October. And there are other games that I want to play. So it's like at some point it's like, come on, like I just want to finish this game and move, but it just seems to keep going on. But I know I'm getting towards the end of it because I've cleared pretty much the entirety of the map. I'm doing the last kingdom up north, and then the only thing I have left is Westminster. So that's the last place on the map. So I know I'm getting close to the end of the game because what else? I'm sure there's other stuff that's going to be done, but I'm like, what else is there to do after you've cleared the map? And I know they have some amazing expansion content planned for that game. So I will probably keep it on my PS4 for the foreseeable future, along with Cyberpunk, just to, so that those games can get patched up and everything else. But like I said, the plan is to roll into Mass Effect Legendary Edition. That comes out May 14th, so I've got about a month. I mean, literally right out around a month now, because this is the 12th of April. Um, 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 weeks basically, so a little more than a month. Oh, and the 14th is good. That's a Friday, so I'll have all Saturday and Sunday to just go crazy with that first Mass Effect game, which is such a good game. The voice actors in that game. Oh, yeah, I can't wait. And I gotta admit, like the visual changes, they look really good. Not gonna lie. Um, it's gonna be nice to sit there and just sprawl on the couch on the big screen. Because the first time I played it on the PC. You know, so those first 3 games I only played on the PC. So whatever the monitor size is, which you know, but having it on a big screen and just on the comfort of your couch is I like PC gaming, but I love console gaming. Sorry. Like the older I get, the more I like the console because I like just being able to like sprawl out on the couch and just like you're immersed. I got headset on and I'm just in this world. The PC gaming has always been a part of my life and I love PC games, but you know, console I just like the evolution of the console for me is where I prefer to spend my time gaming these days. It is what it is. And I've also noticed that the older I've gotten, like I just don't really give a shit about MMORPGs anymore, which sounds funny considering I spent the last 6.5 years, or almost 7 years, developing an MMORPG. It's not where my passion lies anymore. I do love Lord of the Rings Online, but not because it's an MMORPG. I love it because it's a game that lets me immerse myself into the world of Middle Earth and Tolkien. And it's nice that I can play it with friends who want to join me from time to time. Same thing with Star Wars Old Republic. Um, but I like both of those games because I can get in and play on my own whenever I want. And then if friends want to join me from time to time, or I want to go do a raid or something else, I can. But I like to have that. I like that flexibility. The idea of playing an MMORPG just because it's a group-based game. Those days are behind me. Like I really just can't be bothered anymore. And Chris is slowly but surely getting interested in games, so I'm hoping with the PS5 that I'll be able to get her into doing some casual um, co-op games, perhaps. Especially if we get a good RPG or a good fantasy game that has really good storyline and stuff, because she loves fantasy. I'm thinking the Hogwarts game is going to be a game that she might actually want to play, but we'll see. But she's dabbled a little bit. Fingers crossed. I guess which brings us to Project Ram and stuff we can talk a little bit about at the end of this episode. If you are a subscriber, you have seen a lot of updates going up on Patreon over the past few weeks. Um, we have been sharing. She got her tablet. She's been working on tablet art. We've shared a couple of pieces in the Project Ramen section for subscribers. The pieces that she's working on, which some of those are practice, some of those are going to go into the tabletop um, core rulebook, and then she'll be doing chapter art later on. I don't know why I'm holding on to it. I'm going to show you guys this here in a minute. So anyway, she's working on concept art, and then like yesterday, I spent a couple hours and I just filled up an ArtStation board for her with like 115 pieces of art that are that represent the style that she's working on learning in terms of digital painting, and as inspiration sources for her, because a lot of what we're dealing with here, I'm there's a lot of flexibility with Project Ramit in the sense that I've created a world map, but I haven't defined what all these places look like. I kind of know that this is a forest and these are mountains and there's this over here. The only thing that's really defined is going to be the island in the center of the inner sea, because we know there's a smoking volcano there from where this rift happened. But for the most part, I've not defined any like points of interest that have an actual specificness to them, like this pillar of rock here with a glowing rune in the middle of it that signifies blah. I've not done any of that. It's literally as we have brainstorming sessions, my brother and I, and when Chris sits in on those, we come up with these things. And so the idea is that I'm just going to let her go crazy with her imagination. And as she looks at other pieces of art that inspire her and draws her own version of them, I'll be able to take a look at that and go, I think that's going to work here. And I will just take that piece of art and slot it in somewhere in the world and say, that's going to be this, and that's going to be this, and that's going to be this. And then that's going to help influence me as I continue to write the campaign module and the chapters of the book. Because if she draws a really cool entrance to a cavern, as an example, that becomes, the Cavern of Doom, and I can stick that cavern wherever I want. And if she does a cool looking castle, you know, on the plains, then I know that this is going to be the castle that goes here. And if she does another castle that's in a hilly forested region, then that's the castle that goes here. And if she does a castle in the mountains, that's the castle that goes over here. And if she does a castle on the coast, that's the castle that goes over here. Like, so I'm letting, I'm not defining what the art has to be. I'm letting her have free reign to explore her artistic nature and just run with it. So she's been working on a lot of stuff now. She's got a new storyboard now that she's looking at, and she's going to be going forth from there. Joey and I have made some adaptations to the first few hours of the adventure game, which, if you haven't watched Brainstorming episode 5, which was last week, take a look at that. I kind of did a rough, just a quick outline of the expanded version of that starting city that we wanted to see, and we're going to be fleshing that out a little bit more. And we've decided to push the city back to chapter 2. That way, we don't have to worry about designing the city on top of designing this town, because it's going to be much easier for us in terms of getting a product out the door by the end of the year. To just have a simple game. And we really this conversation came about after he sent me a message a few weeks ago and was like, "Hey, do you have a copy of um, Quest for Glory 1 that I can get from you so that I can install it on this beat up old laptop that I've got that I'm letting my son use because he's reading now and it'd be a fun little thing for him to do on the weekends." And I was like, "Absolutely, here's a copy. It's like a 25 megabyte thing. Um, and so he got that installed on the laptop for my nephew, and he sends me this video of my nephew playing the game on a Saturday morning, and I was like, I'm gonna go fucking play that game. I haven't played that game in years. I did play Quest for Glory 3 and 4 last year, and then but I didn't do 1 or 2 because I played those games so many times over the years, but I hadn't played the first one in it's probably been 15 years. So I loaded it up and spent like 4 hours and was like, we need to change. Like, we need to actually we need to mirror this. Like, we need to figure out how we can take our idea and kind of model it after the Quest for Glory 1 model with aside from combat because we're not planning on having combat in the first game unless there are exceptions to that. Like, if we got a ton of support on Patreon, we might, and hire another developer, then that's something we would put the other developer on is developing a basic combat system that would reflect something simple like that. But the idea is that we're going to be taking the King's Quest 6 approach or the King's Quest 5 approach where it's just all puzzles and narrative, but we really liked the way that Quest for Glory had like the silly humor and the way you're just this young hero just getting started. Um, and so we started looking at, after I played that game for a few hours and after he was playing it with his son, we both kind of went, we should just take a step back and maybe rethink the storyline that we wanted to do for the first game because we're early enough on now that we have the flexibility to do that because we've only designed the first scene, which is the street with the 4 buildings. And we had already planned on maybe designing some of the rest of the town, some of the rest of that village, just so that we had some background to look at as the characters zoning across from places. But then we decided to take that idea and just expand it a little bit more and say, okay, so now that we know better what's going on in the world, the lore and everything else, we can put we put the presence, we could put the church here and have their presence with the barracks, and we can have the Adventurers Guild here in the town, and we can actually have a series of quests that all take place in the forest and everything else that's right around here before he has to get the boat that takes him to the island to get the sword. That's still, by the way, that's still in there. Like, we haven't changed the ending. All we've done is instead of sending him to the city to go to the Adventurers Guild, we're actually going to put the Adventurers Guild in the starting village, which is the same way that Quest for Glory does it. When you get to town, there's the sheriff right there. You go right, that's over to the tavern. You go left, that's the magic store and the Adventurers Guild. So we've kind of decided to look at it that way, and so that's what this is. This is a rough sketch of what it might look like in terms of the types of buildings we're going to see, and then I'm going to be working on in my spare time. It's not a high priority, but the next map that I work on is going to be this map. It's going to be the map of the town. But in the meantime, I'm full speed ahead with the core rulebook. I've been cranking out all of the introduction sections, how to play the game, how dice rolls work, and I'm pulling from like the D&D handbook, the Pathfinder handbook, other games, but it's obviously my own system. So, like getting into the dice roll section last night, I was going in there and we're talking about, yes, the D20 is used for a lot of things, but I use D6 for a lot of stuff. That's mostly about role play and flavor. And so I was defining that whole system last night of how players can use the D6 um, for fluff and for flavor. And it's like, as an example, very quickly, let's say you're going to go pick the pocket of somebody and you need a 60% or higher to pick the pocket of that guy. You roll a 67%. So you succeeded, but you didn't succeed by that much. So the DM at his discretion might say, go ahead and roll a 6-sided die. Let's see how well you succeeded. It's not in doubt that you succeeded, but let's see how well you succeeded. And so you throw the 6-sided die, and there's there's a good and bad result. The good result would be you get away scot clean, scot free, and no one noticed anything. The bad result doesn't mean that you failed in the pickpocketing. It's the bad result means that, oh, when you picked his pocket, you accidentally maybe you stumbled over a rock and you kind of, instead of getting away scot free, you kind of, you know, tucked into the guy and kind of fell into him and pushed him off course. And now he turns around and says something to you like, "Yeah, watch where you're going, you stupid idiot." And now I'm going to roll a 6 as the DM. And again, this isn't about whether or not you succeeded or failed at the pickpocket. You definitely succeeded at the pickpocket. What I'm rolling for now is to see, does he just shout something at you and walk away? Or does he shout something at you and then shove you and initiate an actual combat scenario? And that's what that roll is for. And those are all 6-sided dies, which help influence those types of role play scenarios or off the cuff scenarios where you're adding a little bit of extra flavor to the game while still using a rule set that helps you decide how that is going to play out. And it is somewhat up to the DM and their discretion about how to use that system, but that's an example of what I've been working on recently. So the core rulebook is full steam ahead. Um, if you haven't checked out the updates for the point and click adventure game, that's full speed ahead. We got all the text clickables and everything else working as of last night. Now he's working on the narration system, which is going to be a bit of a learning curve for him, but he's diving into it full speed. So yeah, I've been talking about Project Drama for 10 minutes, so I should probably shut up now. What else can I talk about? Nothing. I think that's a good episode for Monday Musings. Later on today, the next Mondays in MMORPGs episode is out, so don't forget to tune into that. We're going to be talking about managing expectations in this next episode, which is it's from both sides of the equation. It's players understanding the difference between a AAA studio and an indie studio and how to manage their expectations in terms of development cycles and dev time and realistic timelines for project completion. And then there's other things from the development side and from the business management side about how companies need to better manage the expectations of their players by being honest and truthful and transparent with them. So it's a fun discussion. I'm joined again by co-host Lexer and Scribbles from over at Defend the Night. We're looking forward to continuing those. We've already recorded the third episode was recorded last week. That's going to be coming out the following Monday, which is going to be on monetization, and we talk about a lot of different stuff in that episode. And we look at Netflix and Hulu and games and cash shops and subscription fatigue and you know all the competition these days. It's a good episode. So we're having a lot of fun. We've got 16 episodes planned. We're trying to record. We go into every Tuesday recording at least one episode, but the idea is that we'll record 2 episodes every Tuesday as we can. Last week we couldn't because we had some family members who were sick, so we were only able to get one done. But regardless, we've got 16 episodes planned out, and we're going to be moving through those over the next few months. So stick around. Obviously, I would love if everyone shares this stuff out to all your friends and family, community members, so on and so forth. You would love it. And don't forget to let people know about our Discord. I haven't really worried about Discord too much. It's just a place where people who have followed me here from the Saga of Lucemia Discord. And moving forward, we're going to start to be promoting Discord a little more heavily, along with, obviously we're promoting the Patreon, but it's also not, this isn't a crowd-funded project. Project Diamond is not a crowd-funded project. It is Joey has a day job. He has a ranch and excavation company. I have a day job with Hidden Compass. The support people give us at the Patreon pages is mostly about, it helps us purchase assets. We don't have to purchase those out of pocket. That goes towards helping pay for Chris's tablet. And the idea is basically more or less is that as we get deeper into that and more people subscribe, then that will be money that ends up getting given to Chris. And then if we get in excess and we hit our goals, then we'll be able to hire another artist to work on things and so on and so forth. But Discord is a great place. We're going to start to do some live streams for Project Drammond. Chris is going to do some live streaming of her work as she's working on art. I'm going to be doing some live writing sessions. And those are things we want to do privately. We don't want to do those on YouTube because we want to do those for the subscribers of the Patreon. And we're going to be doing those through Discord. So I would say to tell everybody that come join our Discord. Links are below. hit us up there. And of course, you can always check out TikTok and everything else we're doing on a daily basis and pick up a subscription to Patreon if you want. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to this channel, hit the bell icon so that you get updates for future content, and stick around. Lots of cool stuff coming to the pipeline. Also this week, a new Lotro Cooking in Real Life episode. It's the chicken mushroom pie, which I just ate this afternoon and then proceeded to have a hardcore nap afterwards because it was food coma. It was delicious. Stick around. Lots of fun stuff coming this week. See everybody in the next episode.